Y'all ready? Let's go! This is your wake-up call. This is your daily reminder.
All right, people. Here we come. Here we come. Oh, that's right. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
All right. I think we got it together now. We're just about there.
Okay.
We got stuff happening here.
Yes.
All right. Hello, everybody. How you doing tonight? Glad to be connected up once again for conversations. Welcome all those that come on. It's rough because we don't have the watch parties to do anymore.
Yes,
So
exactly.
People got to remember or catch the notices that come from the church page, but hopefully you're catching it.
But you know what I do? Sometimes I just go ahead, we'll do the show, and then I'll tag people afterwards.
Later?
Yeah.
And then they can join in after the fact.
Exactly, right? Because we don't have a whole lot of time to actually tag everyone
anymore.
when we start.
It's a lot harder to do.
It is.
Thank you, Facebook. Thank you very much.
You know,
it a lot more difficult.
The life of change of 2021.
Yeah, so
lots of changes.
You kind of just got to know that we're coming now.
Yeah.
Hopefully we have regular, faithful supporters, and they know Saturday nights what's going down, right?
Yes, and there's some other things that we can do. I can start posting ahead of time.
True.
As a reminder.
Yeah.
And I meant to do that today, but yeah.
It's a little busy today.
Yes, it has been a very busy
I usually
day.
I usually try and do it like on Friday or Thursday, actually.
Yeah.
So that it filters out. But it's a little busy this week.
It has been.
We've been in Syracuse. We've been here. We had at the church this morning. And just lots of stuff going on.
Lots of things. Birthdays, mom's birthday weekend.
Hey, happy birthday. And she was sick for her birthday.
Yeah, she had a little cold. Don't get excited. Don't start to worry. She had a little cold, but she's better now.
She had a little cold, but she was thinking what?
Oh my goodness. You know what? If we get a sniffle these days, ever since coronavirus has come into our lives, if we get a sniffle or a cough, the first thing some of us think is, oh Lord, it's coronavirus.
Oh boy.
Well, that was my mom.
Yeah,
she was like, I'm going to the doctor.
Things were a little chimed up there for a few. It's all good. Everything's good.
Everything's good.
We keep moving on.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, happy birthday to mom. And
84. Wow.
84 years old.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes,
She's still
wonderful.
Kicking and getting around.
Yes. And she's still driving.
Yeah, still driving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So life is good. So hello to all those that are coming on board. Welcome to you. If you're there, just say hello. Send us a heart or a thumb or something, message so that we know that you're on board with us. And we got a few things to talk about tonight. A couple significant things going on that we thought we would share with you and perhaps talk about with you that you might be interested in. There's a lot of things that are going on in terms of that keep raising out all these inconsistencies in national laws for policing and just the law in general. A lot of those things are really starting to show up more and more now. Yeah. And so, there's a lot of examples of that to talk about. And so that's one of the things we want to talk about today. Also, there was a raid on Rudy Giuliani's house this week.
Yes.
And that raid was from the feds. From the feds. They're looking for info and intel. They're not, so it's really interesting because the feds, the FBI and the attorney general have really kicked up in a lot of ways now. It's kind of like it took a little bit for the government to kind of stabilize itself after the transition of power. But, they're looking into a lot of situations in terms of, domestic terrorists, in terms of policing issues and what's happening in certain policing, so they're putting pressure on certain communities, certain police departments to say, hey, what are you doing?
Exactly.
And is this right? What you're doing? How are you handling these issues?
Right.
So the pressure is starting to really come from top down. We talked about, there's a lot of change that's been going on in terms of trying to get policing under control. And one of the things we talked about like for a year was that even though there was all of this protesting going on the streets last year, you weren't getting conversation and action from the right people.
Exactly.
We talked about this again and again and again. You've got all this, the sound and the disruption, and you have the sympathy really after George Floyd from the nation.
Yes.
But it wasn't churning itself into discussion and speaking from, the federal officials, from the senators, from the congressmen, from the president. And that's ultimately where the changes get driven from.
Right.
On a
Well,
national basis.
I think the protesting and the noise was necessary.
It is necessary.
It's very necessary to get things moving into the right direction.
Right. You need that sympathy and empathy towards things to really get the right atmosphere. That atmosphere from the bottom up is what drives the politicians to respond.
Right.
Because they only respond, frankly, when it has political advantage to them or when it has political motivation. The role of every senator, every congressman is to represent the voice of their people.
Exactly.
And so when the voice of the people on a corporate basis begins to rise up, then that's when they should be saying something and doing something and representing. They're representatives of the people. It's called the House of Representatives.
The House of Representatives, yes.
Right?
And it's very true that the voice of people that riot, well, they're rioting because they feel are unheard.
And protesting.
Right. Rioting and protesting is because they feel that they are unheard. So all of it is necessary.
Well, the thing is, as long as they feel like it's just some little subgroup, they're not going to care much.
Right.
When it starts percolating, and that's what happened
state to state.
Well, that's what happened with George Floyd.
Right.
Is because the whole world had witnessed it.
Exactly.
It was no longer just one little group over here that was upset.
Right.
It was everybody that was kind of uncomfortable, at a minimum uncomfortable.
Yes.
On a more extreme, disgusted with what they saw.
Yes.
And as a result, which is also evident by what happened with the jury in the Derek Chauvin case. The whole jury, very diverse jury, black, white, mixed. And it seemed they didn't have any problem with being consistent from what they saw. So it had that kind of impact, which started sending the message up. But the problem was the message was going up, but there were no politicians that were carrying that message.
No.
It was a political thing.
Yes.
And so during that whole time last year, you didn't hear any governors, you didn't hear from senators, you didn't hear from congressmen.
Right.
Now
you do.
Especially, you notice a difference right after the Derek Chauvin verdict. First of all, the president of the United States comes out and does a speech as a result of a case at a local level.
Right.
That's really doesn't happen. It just shows you how significant that moment was.
Yes, it was. Yes, it's going to, well, it is bringing about change.
And that's the thing. You now have senators, you now have, congressmen. They haven't all decided on what they're going to do yet, but the conversation and the talk,
it's on the table.
You're starting to get legislation that's being pushed out.
Yes.
And so you're getting movement now. I think we can at least reasonably say there is movement in the right direction in terms of these efforts. Now, whether that that energy will maintain long enough to get these things through, that's the question, right? Because sometimes you get things going and then it fades away. Which is why, remember last week we were talking about how the press keeps pointing out these things. They keep firing out another case. That's what keeps the pressure on. That's why I was saying it wasn't necessarily unbiased reporting, but it was very significant because it keeps the pressure on to keep the conversation going so that the fire, as long as the fire is still lit,
right,
these things, you want these things to get all the way through Congress. And that is a journey.
It's a journey. It will not be, and it has not been a situation that has happened quickly or overnight. Right. However, it is on the table of discussion.
It's on the table.
And we're happy about that.
Right. That's that. But
we have to keep it there.
Right.
It's not done, but it is on the table.
So in the meantime, you see continuing efforts at different levels. That's what we were talking about. The FBI, they're coming in, and the word was with the Derek Chauvin case. This was pretty cool.
Yes,
was interesting. Was that if he had been found innocent,
exactly,
the feds were waiting
to arrest
him immediately, and recharge him with a federal crime.
Yeah, exactly. So he wasn't getting off in any kind of way.
And there's political reasons to do that too, right?
Yes.
Because
they didn't want rioting.
Exactly.
Because
because if he would have been found innocent, it would have been on across the country.
Exactly. So it would have been a terrible thing.
So they were prepared to make sure he wasn't going anywhere because they would help. I'm sure they knew it would kind of help calm down or hold back some of the craziness that more than likely would have happened if he had gotten off. Yeah. But the feds have been lining up They're going in actually to Milwaukee
Yes.
overall in terms of the police department,
Mhm.
several others.
Mhm.
And so we were talking about this raid on Giuliani's house, Rudy Giuliani,
Yes.
which, all the noise this week about, oh my gosh, how are they doing this? This is just insane. He's just fussing and complaining. But it had to do with all the talk he did with Ukraine. He has a tendency of kind of walking himself in his own problems, right?
Mhm.
So he went back when he was looking into trying to we'll come back to that. Back when he went into when Rudy was trying to excuse me, dig up dirt
Right.
on Biden's son,
Mhm.
and he was investigating Beau Biden's work relationship in Ukraine and trying to
Right.
tie Joe into all of that.
Yes.
Some stuff started coming up. But wait a minute, what were you doing over in Ukraine?
In Ukraine, in the
And
first
how
place.
were you trying to get this information?
Right.
What were you doing to leverage it? And then they, I ain't doing
Who, what, where,
Right.
when, and why?
Right. So now
all of those questions.
So now the feds are like, okay, we want to know really what you were doing.
Yes.
And some of the stuff we heard, we want to
Mhm.
know if it's true or not. There's evidence, blah, blah, blah. So the question now is there a cascading series of things that are going to push here, right?
Mhm.
In terms of they go after, remember, they always do small fish to big fish. That's the way most departments, police departments gotta work,
Mhm.
is they're going after drugs. They get the local drug addict to tell them who sold them the drugs. And they get the drug person that sold the drugs to say, okay, we'll give you a break if you tell us who you got them from, who your
Right.
source is, and we'll give you a break if you
Mhm.
tell us who the kingpin is. They work their
Right.
way up.
Yes.
So if they're going after Giuliani now, the question is, are they strategizing, get him, corner him, get him in trouble so that he flips on the next person,
yes. Oh, trickle down.
trickle up, right?
Trickle up and down,
to
all
see
around.
if it goes all the way up to
Hmm.
the big boss.
That's right.
Right? So that's the question now, is how far is this going to go? Do you think, I mean, because, nothing has been really said in terms of charging Trump for any of the stuff that's gone on, including the
What's
Capitol
going on with that?
So it's the question.
Haven't been hearing much.
Do you think that they will eventually try and work their way all the way up to the president?
It's very possible. That's something else. We don't know what's going on
Right.
with charges
That's what I'm saying,
that
right?
are being made against Trump.
Right.
We don't know if there are,
Mhm.
but there should be.
Well, I'm sure they're looking
for
they
something.
look for evidence, and they have to look
Right.
to tie it all the way back.
And they have to have, and you know what? You just can't bring a case against someone. You have to have your facts.
Yeah, you have to have your facts.
So you have to have the facts of the case
Mhm.
before you can bring anything
Yeah.
to court.
But it would be interesting to know,
So they're probably
behind
building
the
their case.
curtain,
They're building a case.
right?
They're building
if
cases
this
against
is part of them trying to work their way back up the chain.
Yes.
Into remember, they got cabinet members. Even when it comes to the attack on the Capitol,
Mhm.
there were, they had a lot of questions as to whether President Trump had supported those people who
Right.
had instigated this, whether
Right.
he knew, whether he was connected to
Mhm.
people like the Proud Boys, things like that.
Right.
There were people in and around the room when all this was happening that was watching his behavior,
Mhm.
and so eventually they can go back to cabinet members and say, look, and what they rather do is say, instead of saying, what do you know?
Mhm.
They want to come back and say, we know what you know.
We
just need you to tell us. 'Cause
Yes,
we know because so-and-so said this and so-and-so said this, and they said you were in the room and we know you heard. So tell us
right.
what you
Well,
said.
they're building a case.
Exactly.
You have to
Exactly.
have facts.
So this is more than about Giuliani. If
Yes.
Giuliani actually gets a charge with something here, you can believe that that's going to go beyond just him. They're going to really be pushing. So time will tell really what's going to happen with that.
Exactly.
But anyway, you want to talk about
Yeah.
the Chauvin and Maxine the Water statement?
Yes, speaking about Donald Trump,
Mhm.
and as Maxine Waters always said, that he was dog whistling.
Right.
She used that term a lot.
Mhm.
When he had said a few things
Mhm.
regarding the insurgents. Then
Mhm.
he was able to stand back and stand by.
Uh-huh.
She said he was dog whistling.
Mhm.
Yet, when Maxine Waters made a statement regarding the Derek Chauvin case,
Mhm.
and she said if he was acquitted, that we have to become more
Mhm.
aggressive. Well, they tried to use that statement against her. They not only against her, they tried to use it in order to have the charges against Chauvin dropped.
Right. Right.
Yes.
They thought that if
but yet Trump dog whistled, and the whole time that he was in presidency, he incited riots.
Well, part of the difference here was the comment that she made was in the midst of an ongoing trial.
So
right?
yes, so they thought they could use that.
But you know what? They had
defense.
one of
Yes.
one of the jurors came out and they said by that point, they were already responsible, or they were charged not to pay a lot of attention to what was in the news, and they were already tied up in this case and busy. So they said they really didn't even know much about that. They weren't sequestered yet. They were about to be.
Exactly.
But they were like, look, they were into this case. They were into the details of it. They were living that, so they didn't really pay much attention to what was going on outside. And so from their vantage point, it didn't make a whole lot of difference.
Exactly.
And by the way, how many people had something to say during the trial? Right? How many people had something to say?
The world knew about this trial.
Right.
It wasn't a secret.
Publicly talking.
Publicly, exactly.
To say that, hey, this could deter them, because she said something like, we need to really take a stand on
be more aggressive. Those were her. Yes.
Yeah.
If he was.
Who else hasn't said that? I mean, we've said that. Does that mean that
the case should be? That, yes.
In terms of inconsistency policing, we talk about that all the time. People are talking about that all the time. Now they may say, okay, because of her position of influence and that. Look, she's not even in Milwaukee or Wisconsin. She's in California.
Exactly.
So whatever,
But that was the defense doing their job. They're doing their job.
Hey, they tried.
They tried.
But is tough.
As we say, they tried it.
It was an uphill battle for them to try and really get him off.
Yeah.
But there are some interesting things that are going on right now in terms of, like I said, this is an ongoing, continuing, above and beyond. Derek Chauvin, I think, was one of the real key stepping stones to say, okay, there's a change in attitude about how we approach some of these things with policing from a legal standpoint. It went through the legal process, and this policeman was not given the benefit of the doubt of doing his job. Somebody finally was saying through the legal system that, listen, there is a limit to what you can do and still call yourself doing a job of serving and protecting. Right. And this is above and beyond that limit. So this is the first level of drawing the line. And so now you have a lot of these things that are going on that are being they have been brought up. They're being brought up into the attention of the public.
Right.
And then you start questioning this. You have to keep going at it. Well, is this too much? Is this too little? How's too much? What's too far? So you have a lot of this kind of activity going on in testing of these cases. Some of them actually going to court, some of them not. But like, for example, and by the way, before we go into that, this little nugget that we found this week about the case, and this just shows you the inconsistencies in the legal system right now, because we read something this week that says that in most states, in most jurisdictions, not just most states, in most jurisdictions, the premier charge that he was charged of, this second degree unintentional murder, would not have been even available to charge him with in other jurisdictions.
Exactly.
Because of something called the merger law. Hey, we're going to give you a little merger. We're going to give you a little intel today, right? The merger rule is something that is listed in most jurisdictions. And what it does is it prevents a prosecutor from charging somebody with murder over the top of a felony.
Exactly.
So a felony, right? I did something aggravated. I punched you. We fought. Whatever the case may be. That's a felony crime, right? A felony assault crime. What they say is because oftentimes, typically, like we talked about, but for law,
the
rule,
but
right?
for, yes.
But for rule says if it wasn't for the fact that you had done this wouldn't have happened. And so in most cases, that's the way the law works, right? If you hadn't tried to steal, like there was a case here in Rochester this week, a young man just turned himself in. He turned himself in, the 16-year-old who had carjacked this man's car, and the guy ended up dying.
Yes.
Right? I don't know if he was shot, whatever the case may be, or whether he just had a heart attack, but he gets charged with murder because he was carjacking, but the guy ended up dead. And whether he shot him or whether he had a heart attack or whether he had a stroke, the fact that he had initiated that act would allow them to charge him for that. So in an actual felony assault, you can't do that in most cases because of the merger rule. So if we're in a bar or outside, right, and we start fighting and I punch you, right, and you go down And when you go down, you end up dying, right? They don't want to double dip that to say, okay, you were fighting, but we're not going to charge you for murder because you got in a fight with somebody.
Right.
So the merger rule says that you cannot make the charge of murder if you were charging them, or if what happened was a felony assault.
Mm-hmm.
The exception of the rule happened to be in Milwaukee.
And in that state.
Right.
Yes.
And so they happened to be able to make that charge against him there where they couldn't have in other areas. The point we're making is, again, inconsistencies in the law.
In the law, right.
If he had been somewhere else. Now think about it. Also down south, in a lot of these down south areas where you have the stand your ground.
Exactly.
Rule,
yes.
Right?
And Florida actually had to lift their stand.
Did they lift it?
Oh yeah, they did.
There's
a
couple of states that still have it.
Right.
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 And so in the stand your ground rule, again, inconsistency. So depending on what state you're in, whether you can claim that as being your right, versus other states, these inconsistencies in the law.
Right. Well, some of them are antiquated laws that have not been changed.
Right. Yeah. And they really need to be reviewed. It should be consistent across the country. And I believe that is what we're coming to with policing. That really does need to happen because from state to state, the policing and the rules tend to be or seem to be different. Right. And overall, we need to have some consistency, and we need to reimagine policing. I agree that it should be done. I'm just questionable as to whether it will be done. Because again, you talk about lift, like we talked about what it would take to get all these things through Congress, right? The lift that it will take, because what's going to happen is the states are going to say, no, we are independent states. We have the right to make rules.
Well, that's what's going. Well, that's the why we have the big fiasco that we have right now, because state to state, they are making their own decisions on how they will do policing. And that's how they will handle. That's going to be the real challenge of this, because trying to get them to do things consistently across states is, that's a big deal. That's a very big job. This is the battle involved that's gonna take place. Yes. So if you try and come up with policing standards and direct them down, let's say the federal government comes up with the policing standards and they try and dictate them downward, many of the states will rebel against that. Oh yeah, they will, and some of them are, because some police right now are saying, well, what do we have to protect us? Yeah, but that's a little different story. What I'm saying is that in trying to dictate downward, let's say we decide that all the governments should, like this merger rule or like the stand your ground rule should be consistent across all the states. Right. And so here's the edict. Here's what it should look like. Here's the standard of how it should work. Some states will take it. Some other states are going to say, no way, we're not going to do that. We don't have to. Right. We set our own rules in the state. What you want is for the states to mutually come to agreement and say, because again, you got these rules, no chokeholds, there was another set of rules that came out in Ohio. Yes. An Ohio judge temporarily put a ban on non-lethal force being used by the police against demonstrators. This is in Ohio. This is a U.S. judge in the state of Ohio, which means, again, for Ohio, it's temporary. It's a temporary ban. It says you can't use non-lethal force, tear gas, pepper spray, wooden bullets, spraying water. These are non-lethal forces. Right. The police are not allowed to use those against demonstrators. It says without appropriate provocation or probable cause.
Same thing. Appropriation. Provocation means they did something to actually cause you to be able to respond back. They can't. In other words, they can't say, "Look, y'all need to clear the street." Just because you're standing there protesting. Yeah, get out of the street. I'm going to tear gas you and spray you. Exactly. Yeah, they can't. They cannot do that because actually, what they're doing is that they're using it unfairly. It seems to me that when people of color are standing around and they're protesting, that then you want to bring the National Guard. You want to bring out the water hose, National Guard, bullets, and the whole nine. But yet, when people are storming the Capitol, it's okay. So
you're not doing these things.
Now, what appropriate provocation does mean, though, if they attack them, if the demonstrators change to rioters
and become violent,
some fireballs, sprays, then they can.
Yes.
But if they're just standing there and making noise and they're not actually doing anything wrong, then they can't say, look, you got to clear out then just right.
Yes.
So
because they have the right to protest.
But that again is, the question of whether that should be across the board, whether chokeholds should be allowed or under certain circumstances or not, whether these kind of different other types of policing tactics should take place. There's a lot of discussion right now about mental health.
Oh, wow.
Right. And how that should be handled, because we're saying there's a mental health crisis.
There has been a mental health crisis for a number of years.
And it's just getting
and it's really it's getting worse. Actually, it's heightened during this season of COVID and quarantine, because you have more people that are in mental crisis. You have more people that are depressed. The issue with the mental health crisis is that there's not enough beds to for people that are in crisis. There are people that are actually going, to get services and to get help.
Right.
And because they can't accommodate them, they're sending them back out into the community.
Right.
And then something drastic happens.
Right.
And, this has actually been documented and has actually been brought to court on several different occasions, because the person has gone to get help and they were not accommodated.
Right. And they were sent back out.
And they were sent back out, and then they do something.
Something happens.
Something happens. They do something drastic.
Well,
they hurt themselves or they hurt someone else. There was a situation in New York where this person went to get help because he knew that he was in crisis.
Right.
They released him, and he ended up pushing someone over on the railroad track.
Yeah.
I mean, just right after he was released.
Yeah.
He knew that he was in need.
Right.
So there has to be something has to be done in order to accommodate and to help people that are in mental crisis. They actually need that system actually needs they need more help.
Well, and the whole thing has been even exacerbated even more by drugs.
Right? Exactly.
You got all this drug crisis going on.
Oh,
so
the heroin epidemic.
You have people on the streets. We just had one here about a month or so ago where a young man was on drugs, I believe. I can't remember if it was mental health or drugs, I think it was mental health. And he pulled out a knife, right? And he's charging against a policeman, and they shot him to death, right? And neither side wants to be in that situation. Right. But how to handle these types of things. And so there's a lot of question. Is there a better way to deal with it? And so some suggestions are you have to have more mental health professionals involved, available to be on site and rapid call. It has to be rapid call.
Yes.
Because it used to be the police would gather them and they would take them to the mental health place, right? For whatever. And then they deal with them there.
Right.
Now we're saying we need to have them out on location, on site, real time.
And in order to de-escalate the situation. And a lot of times, if you are a person that has mental health training on dealing with the mentally ill, you do know how to talk. You're trained to know how to talk to these people and talk them down. Actually, when you're yelling and screaming at them, and pointing guns at them, it actually exacerbates the situation.
Right.
I mean, even if you're not pulling a gun, but if you are raising your voice when you're talking to someone in crisis, you actually make the situation worse. I have had training in behavior analysis and ABA, applied behavior analysis. And I trained under a actual clinician when I was in New York City. And this person, the clinical person, when there was a person, an adult or adolescent in crisis, you could barely hear him talking to the person. He's one-on-one with them, and he's talking very calmly in a way that if you were present, you really couldn't hear what he was saying to the person. Soft-spoken. So I learned to do that from this particular person. I have actually helped people over the telephone. That was where a person in the household was in mental crisis. First thing I told the person on the phone, first of all, you lower your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And as he lowered his voice, the person in crisis actually lowered his voice.
Right.
And we're able to get through. Now, this is a type of training that police officers need or should have.
Yeah, see, that's...
I mean, you need the mental health person on site,
Mhm.
but police also need to have this type of training. They're not de-escalating situations.
This is my point, is that, yes, having mental health professionals available, prepared on, for short calls is one thing. But the reality is, now people are saying like, well, why would you send a police officer's call? You would send a mental health person. But at the same time, you may send somebody to that person. That person, like we said, might pull out a knife, might show up with a gun.
Yeah.
And you need somebody that can handle that as well.
Both situations.
Right.
Right.
The thing that bothers me is, as you were saying, you need police officers to be trained to recognize the signs and treat it differently.
Exactly.
Because what happens right now is a police officer deals with it based on how he's trained to control a situation as a police officer. And so when somebody comes up and they're having a mental issue, or they're drunk and they're unstable, they're trying to control them, when in some cases what they need to do is calm the situation, right? And they're not shifting roles.
No, they're not, because even if a person is not in mental crisis, from what I have observed and from what I've read and what I have seen, these police are going in and they're shooting immediately.
Well, even what we saw, I was about to say, even what we saw with Daniel Prude, right? They didn't shoot him.
They didn't shoot him, but
the way
they
that they
suffocated
treated him,
right,
had nothing to do with his mental instability. Even though it was a call, hey, we've got our loved one is out here, he's having a mental breakdown.
Yes,
we need help, right? So they just kind of constrained them and didn't deal with everything that he was doing in terms of which was off.
Right.
They kind of just laughed it off.
They did,
rather than trying to
help him,
calm him down. They took control. Stop spitting. They didn't deal with, listen, this man is right. They didn't deal with his emotional state.
Right.
They just controlled. Totally no application there to deal with mental crisis. So these are the kind of things that people are talking about need to change. But we got to be careful, because if we go from one extreme to too far to the other extreme, you're gonna end up with a whole nother set of problems. You send a person, a mental health worker out there to help somebody out on the street, and they end up dead. Yeah. Right? Yes. Then there's going to be a whole nother issue of what are we doing? We've gone too far to one extreme.
Well, there was a situation in Ithaca, New York, where the police was called to this lady's apartment because she was in mental crisis. And I believe she did live alone. Right. And the neighbors realized that, hey, we got to get her some help. Well, the officer knocked on the door. Right. And she actually plunged him. Did you hear about that? No, it happened several years ago. She actually plunged the officer. She's in mental crisis with a knife, and she actually murdered him. She actually died.
Right. That's why it's a touchy subject.
It's a very touchy thing, but a person other than an officer should have been on the scene as well.
But my point is, if you go on the other extreme and you said, well, it's a mental issue, let's send a mental health worker, then they don't have the ability to defend themselves. Right. They could be sent right into a person that's
it could have happened to the mental health person as well.
And even easier. Right. If somebody is sent out and they're not prepared for that kind of protection, and this person is really on the fringe, they could be very violent, very strong, very dangerous,
very strong, and this is very true.
So this could be you gotta have the right balance here. I think you still need to have the police involved in it, but you have to have the right kind of training for the police. Then you may have to bring in a support person who can step in and almost take a lead. Like in certain situations they have in the police force negotiators, right? Somebody takes hostages. Yes. The police actually hold up. Yes. And they let the hostage leader, this is their instruction, right? Right. You hold back, you let the hostage negotiator come in and take the lead. And he takes the lead of what all the policemen are doing in terms of resolving this. Well, that's really almost, in essence, a mental health issue. Oftentimes, so that kind of a process. Okay, we got this call, we got this person, but we see something ain't right here. Right. So let's call in the mental health worker. Right. When they get there, they take the lead. Right. And they may decide, okay, don't put handcuffs on, or do put handcuffs on, or treat them this way, or this is the way we need to address this.
Exactly.
You know,
it's similar to when you have a person say, for instance, that they're threatening to jump out of a window or off of a bridge.
Right.
They're actually talked down.
Yeah, they bring in a different person.
They bring in a different person,
who's specially trained to deal with that.
And they have been able to talk that person down and talk them out of harming themselves. So I really think that
you know what? I think we just came up with the model that they should be working with.
Yeah, we did.
We just there you have it.
Yes,
that's the way it really should be.
Because, you know,
and that model is existing already.
Yes, so let's use it. Let's put it in place. For policing.
Because I think, you know, again, the concern is when they start going one extreme or the other, in terms of how to handle stuff, you can get in a very dangerous place.
Exactly.
And so, you know, you have to have policing involved in many of these situations because they can be dangerous. They have to be trained on a different way of approaching, or you have to have them hold and bring in. They have at least get the signal flags. Okay, there's flags coming up. We need to call in such and such. And then when they come in, they will take the lead on what's happening. We're not going to go any more extreme. Except for controlling the situation until they get there. Right. I mean, tell me, with Daniel Prue, what mental health worker wouldn't have come out there and immediately said, y'all need to put some clothes on this man?
First of all,
give me a break.
Give me a break.
Right?
He was
the
naked
first thing
in
they
the
would have
winter.
said, y'all need to get a blanket. Are you out of your minds?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Get some clothes.
And why do you have him handcuffed?
And
so why are you pulling guns on him? And if he's spitting, stay away from him.
And you got him on the ground.
Stay away from him.
But having that kind of situation come in, okay, we see the signs and then they're accountable to that. Okay, we saw signs. So we reached and we called somebody and had them come on site. And you have people that are then that are on call. And available at any moment to come and respond to a call because it's a mental health crisis issue. Like I said, if somebody was on the bridge, if somebody was on the ledge, they would immediately have a call. They'd bring in the right person to do that. If the hostages were taken, you call the right people. If it's a mental crisis, you call in the mental support person from the team to come in and take this over. Right. That makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect.
Who do we need to tell? Are y'all watching this? Y'all need to share this.
Maybe we need to go and make some
all you need to do is share it to the right people.
Share it to the right people.
That makes so much more sense. You know, and then now the other things that they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, we need more microcosm policing instead of, and there's two ways to look at that, right? They're saying we need to take funding from the police, put it in the community, let the community invest in its own self in terms of improvements and relieving some of the issues that cause, you know, people to want to do crime. You know, you have that issue, but then the other side of it is you relocalize the police force, which many cities are trying to do. In other words, they had pulled a lot of the local policing out for cost sake, largely for cost sake. They centralized it, they consolidated it, right? And so now the policemen coming into a community don't really know the people in the community. Now, if you know the community, if I walk the beat like they used to do, I know JoJo there on Saturdays, man, he'd be getting lit. Right. So this is no surprise to me. I know JoJo. JoJo knows me. Right. You know, JoJo. Okay, JoJo, come on, let's go.
Well, you know, growing up, we used to have something. The police, we used to call them officer friendly. And these officers, they actually, what you just said, they actually would be in the community and they would actually talk to the children. They, you know, built a relationship with them. They actually came into the schools as well, your local police officers, and they became familiar with people. And because they were familiar with them, they were probably less likely to harm them. And the people had more trust in the police officers.
And especially like in small towns too, you know, like if you come to jail, someone will be like, look, I know your daddy. I'm about to call your daddy.
Exactly.
Right? Or your mama, even worse.
Exactly.
You
get to know, but it has become so toxic. Policing and the people in the community have actually become afraid of police. They really are afraid of police officers.
It's a huge division.
It's a very big division. It's a couple of days ago, you and I were driving, and I was driving the car. And there was a police officer. You know, there was a police car behind us, and I turned the corner. I pulled into the ice cream.
I was like, we getting ice cream? Wait a minute. I don't need no ice cream. You need ice cream?
I thought you weren't eating ice
You
cream.
weren't eating ice cream. He's like, no, there's a police car behind me. I don't want them following behind me. I'm
And
like,
I said,
what?
and I have a black male in the car.
That would be me.
I was protecting you.
You didn't want me to get shot. I wasn't even driving. I was just sitting in the seat.
But
never know.
You never know. This is what we are dealing with.
Somebody asked me today. So I was driving home and I had that big ladder in the truck.
Yeah.
And you know how it sticks out the back window?
Yes.
They were like, the police aren't going to stop you, are they? I was like, police ain't going to stop me, man.
Yeah, well, you never know. But that was very true.
That are very charged up right now.
We are charged up.
Right?
You know what?
Nobody wants to be stopped.
Nobody wants to be stopped.
Not even stopped.
No,
look,
don't even follow me.
People getting their license plates clean. They got their registration. They got their inspection. I want my inspection sticker to be up to par because I want nobody.
Wait a minute. As my mom calls it, people are not driving dirty.
Oh man, they are like
there used to be a song called "Driving Dirty."
Make sure your tail lights are working. You know, look,
exactly.
Everything. Make sure you got tread on the tires.
Yes.
No excuse. People don't want to get stopped.
No.
Right?
No.
Don't be speeding.
Yeah, exactly. don't drive behind me.
Oh man.
You know, I will turn the corner so that you can go ahead. That's what I did when I saw the police car.
Pull off.
Exactly. I said, no, I got my black man in the car.
That would make them more suspicious. Like you going down the interstate.
Yeah, but they didn't know.
60, I'm just saying, like you going 60 miles an hour and they come up behind you and you start pulling over. You're like, wait a minute, what's up with that?
Yeah, but you have to use some common sense. You know what I'm saying? You have to think.
They look and say, oh, they're black. That's all. They just worry. They just worry because they're black.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a crazy time.
It really is.
But
and something
it really
needs
is
to
very
be done.
that
They need to do
sensitized.
and something has to happen. Something different has to happen. We should not have to live under this type of terrorism because we are actually terrorized.
It really is.
No, it's very true.
You know, this whole thing has really just set the country at a whole nother heightened level, especially African Americans in this country. And there's others too. You know, I mean, it's just a really rough time. Asian Americans are afraid that they're going to get attacked on the street. You know, you have, I can't believe this carjacking thing that's going on right now.
Exactly.
Right midday,
right.
Throughout this whole region, county, throughout the county.
Yeah.
These people are broad day, doing this, and it's dangerous, very dangerous.
Very dangerous. And why?
So there's this. It's just a really strange time in terms of all these types of things that are going on. But there's a lot of, just bringing it back. There's a lot of churn that's starting to happen. It's important that momentum keeps up. So one thing that we've seen again is a willfulness now to actually charge an officer for excessive force and define the fact that, look, this is beyond your job as a police officer.
Right.
Now it will be tested again and again and again. It's being tested right now. So you got the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting that took place on one extreme. You have the Andrew Brown shooting on another extreme. Andrew Brown they suspected him of being, a drug guy. Hey, Purcell. Hey, man, Percy.
Hey.
So.
Is that Pastor B?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you on.
There is, on the one hand, you have Andrew Brown, who was suspected of being a criminal, and they haven't gotten the whole story out. But the issue here right now, again, is they're really hesitant to show all the footage, right? And so, they say what happened was they were trying to issue a warrant against him. Somehow he was in or got in his car, and he started backing out to get away. And they said that when he backed his car out, that he was in essence threatening the safety of the officers, and that was their justification for beginning to shoot at him. They're saying that when he backed the car out, the car was being used as a weapon to potentially attack a police officer.
Right.
So that's their justification to say, okay, because of that, now we all open armed shooting at you. Right, ended up shooting in the back of the head as he was
back of the head
driving away, to stop him. So again, that's going to be tested. And now they've been really constrained. You said, had all this last week. We want to see the footage. Where's the footage? Where's the footage? Now remember, with Ma'Khia Bryant, like within 24 hours, you had, and this is a different state. Here we go, state to state again.
State to state.
Within 24 hours, you had all these different, camera angles, all the cameras from the policemen.
Right.
You saw what happened. Right.
Mhm.
And so people now could make a judgment on their own. Was it right? Was it not right? Some people were never going to agree with it. Other people say, look, he had to protect the other person. But now in North Carolina with Andrew Brown, you know, they're like, we want to see the footage. We want to see the footage. The law here is it has to be released by a judge. They say, okay, we're going to let you see the footage. They take it to the judge. The judge signs off. They show them 20 seconds of footage, 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
Right? Of very constrained and very edited footage. And they're like, wait a minute. We want to see the whole story.
The whole thing.
But it's, again, number one, how inconsistent is this across the board? And the question, as this story really unveils, is it right? Is it within the boundaries of policing to shoot at a guy who's driving away because you said he attacked you with his car? The reality is he was trying to get away.
Exactly.
Right? He's trying to get away.
Yes.
And if you were in the way of the car, yeah, maybe it caused you some threat.
But hadn't they shot him?
I don't know. I don't really know.
Well, from what I've read, from what I understand, they shot him before he actually tried to get, and that's why he tried to get away, and then they shot him in the head.
That's why we need to see the footage.
That's why we need to see
because we need to see exactly what caused, what was the cause and effect.
Right.
What caused what?
Right.
The story is going to have to be revealed, and when it is, because now they're saying, oh yeah, we're going to go back. Now we're going to get the judge to sign off on the full footage, right? Whatever the case may be. And there's some that say, look, we won't release footage until while an investigation is still ongoing. You still have some places that say that.
Right.
So in those cases, you won't see the footage for months, right? That's what happened here with Daniel Prue. They were in ongoing investigation. They said, so they would not release the footage of them.
Right.
So all these inconsistencies from state to state, from region to region on how they handle this stuff really needs to be addressed.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be this inconsistent for the same process of policing.
Exactly. It needs to be the same because it has become a social issue. It's a human issue.
And you still have, by the way, some areas that are required to have their police cameras. Some of them are required to turn them on. Some of them don't even have them yet.
And some of them are saying, turn your cameras off.
Yeah.
You can hear them actually say, turn your camera off.
Right. Because they don't want the fullness. So all
turn
of this is stuff that is still churning in the system.
Yes.
And it's going to be pressed.
Right.
And some of these things aren't as much as about getting a national law. Is these things are going to get pressed, and the pressure on this is going to be like, you need to do the right thing.
Right.
You guys need to have these cameras. You need to have them on during the time.
Yes.
You need to be accountable for what happens. And if you did the right thing, great. And if you did the wrong thing, guess what?
Right.
There needs to be accountability, not only of people to the police, but the police to people.
Exactly. Like I said, this is a human issue. It's a social issue. In education, we have something where we call it imagine learning when we're teaching the kids. Well, we need to reimagine policing. Reimagine.
There's a lot of work here that needs to get done.
Yes.
And if, with the pressure on like it is, I would suspect within the next year, by the end of this year, we should see a lot of changes.
Yes.
You know, but like we said, the first thing is the willingness under certain circumstances to define and say there are policemen that can go beyond the boundaries of policing and we'll hold them accountable. That's number one. And that started with the medical people when they were looking at these cases of these people dying and starting to call them homicides.
Yes.
They were saying this person was actually killed, not that they happened to die.
Right.
Right. But they're calling them homicides and murders. So that started aligning with the judicial system, starting to actually prosecute now for the murderer, rather than just saying, look, it was just a cause and effect type of thing of policing. So there are things that are happening.
Being held accountable. Right. And if you are a police officer on the scene, and your fellow police officer is acting out with excessive force and someone's life is in danger, the officers that are on the scene will now be held accountable if they do not try and intervene and stop that action from happening.
Now, so there are definitely changes coming.
Oh yeah,
you know, and so we'll be watching this to see what happens.
And you know, and the changes due to is something that people of color have been complaining about and they have voiced, but the change is happening due to the George Floyd
It made
case.
huge difference.
It made a huge, this case is actually, it's a monumental case. This case will be actually studied in people in law school.
Also, right.
Yes, just like the runner there, O.J. Simpson.
Right.
His case, O.J. Simpson's case
definitely was the biggest one.
Was a big case. And like you said, this George Floyd case, the Derek Chauvin case, is a monumental case, as big as O.J. Simpson's case.
Now, just to close this out, in all fairness, I think it's very important to say there is, and we do have respect for what policemen do.
Yes.
It's a tough job. Sometimes it's a no-win job. I feel like the Ma'Khia Bryant situation was a no-win situation for that police officer. He was going to be criticized either way.
Either way, somebody was going to die, get hurt, or actually die.
To get hurt.
She was seriously positioned to kill that woman.
They're like, she's only 16 years old. She's my baby. But the reality was,
she called the police.
Regardless.
But still, I'm just saying.
Right? But she was, and she might consider herself protecting herself or her family at the time.
Oh my God.
But to that point, and that police officer steps in this position, it doesn't matter at that point who called. You have one person that is about to severely attack the other. And if he doesn't do it, if he waits or he tries to tase or they try and run and grab her, and it's going to be too late. The woman's going to be stabbed at least one time. So either he's wrong for allowing her to do that to the other person, or he's wrong for stopping her. Right. So that policing is no joke.
It isn't.
Right?
It's not.
I can imagine that policemen right now, either that are policemen or considering being policemen, are thinking heavy.
This is a tough time.
It's already a dangerous job because you never know what you're pulling over. You never know what's coming out at you. You never know what situation you're walking into. And you're the one that's held accountable to come in now and take control of the situation.
Right.
So it's not an easy job. At the same time, you cannot allow it to get you so burned to the point or be in such a mindset that you go above and beyond doing your job. And the job, again, is still supposed to be to serve and to protect. It's not supposed to be to just shut people down at all costs and kill people and say, hey, that's a casualty of the job.
Right.
So there's a mentality there in training that has to be maintained.
Right. So, here's another question with the, what's her name? Ma'Khia Bryant. I've heard people say, well, do the police have to shoot to kill?
Yeah, I know you're going to say that.
Yeah. Do they have to shoot to kill? Can they shoot to maim somebody? Can they shoot to stop someone? To stop them from hurting someone?
I'm not the professional that can say that. I can say that the reason that they do what they do is because just shooting to maim somebody and being that kind of sharpshooter is a little bit more.
When this guy was a sharpshooter.
But doing that in live action with people moving around is a lot more complicated than what you think.
Right. And they're trained to shoot the upper.
Well, because the risk of missing can be even more dangerous than the risk of hitting them.
I get it.
So if you try and go for a leg or a moving arm and you miss, that if that person's coming at you and you miss, then your life may be in jeopardy. You may give them just the amount of time they need, and if you shoot them again and you don't really stop them with that shot, they keep coming.
Yes.
Right. That's why they say if somebody's attacking them with a knife, the rule I believe is if they get within 20 feet. 20 feet might seem like, how am I going to stab you 20 feet away?
Right.
But the point is, if I shoot you and it doesn't put you down, you can still keep coming at me. Right. And so that's why, again, I'm going to shoot you more than once because one shot may not stop you from making that 20 feet over to me. Right. I'm going to just shoot them one time. Boom. And here they keep running and they stab you. So that is what's behind the rationale of the training. Whether there's a better way to do it, I don't know. They're going to have to figure that out. But, it, like I said, a no-win situation for somebody gets put in that. So I do sympathize with police officers and the job that they have to do on a daily basis, because it is not an easy thing.
Job.
And you think about it, if you out there doing that every night, 5 nights a week, let's say for 20 years, how many chances do you get at being in a bad situation that goes bad for you?
Right.
how frequently do you run a situation that could just turn, and how many times you're going to get away with escaping that being bad on you, where you end up shooting somebody and maybe shooting by mistake. It's not a totally impossible situation to see somebody with something in their hands, think it's a gun, you shoot, and you realize it's not.
Right.
And that's why the laws are the way they are for policemen,
right?
Because you can make a mistake.
You can,
but it's a very costly mistake in what they do.
Yes.
So this is not an easy hands down, this is what you do situation. It's tough all the way around.
It is. So it's a sad situation. Yeah. It's not a good situation.
So our time is about up, winding down. I think we do want to say something, and maybe we'll pick it up more next time. We'll see where we are surrounding the COVID surge that's happening in India. It is really, we've been concerned about this. I have some people I do business with in India, and we were talking about this a year ago. I kept asking them, how's it going? Where you at? Because the concern is they have such densely populated areas that once you get COVID in these tight communities, the danger of spreading rapidly through not only hundreds and thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people in these dense areas, is got to be very, very concerning. And they've been managing to keep out of that by when they've seen COVID in a certain area, they totally shut it down. They have, like us, kind of like states within India. And so they have blocked traffic across states, and they have shut down areas. They've been doing for the past year. When COVID starts, they shut down an entire area for at least 2 weeks, and they stop travel. And that's the way they've controlled the spread of COVID. And it's been fairly successful. But it seems for whatever reason, at this point, it's getting past that point where it's just spreading. And hundreds, they had I think 30,000 or something like that a day or something really crazy.
Well, then you also have to remember that India, their sewage system is I don't want to say it's kind of unsanitary over there. It's not
in certain areas. You have areas in India again which are very well laid out, like our suburbs, but then you have areas which are very, very densely populations of poor people.
Yes, and the water system is not that great.
And in those areas, this has been the concern. If you get COVID in those areas, it could spread through those whole areas in a rapid pace. That appears to be what's happening right there.
Right.
And so now the whole world is trying to pick up, the United States pick up and send whatever help they can to them.
Yes.
And it's the only fortunate thing about it is, had this happened a year ago, the other countries would have been so indulged in their own issues, they wouldn't have been able to do anything. They'd been like, hey, you guys are on your own.
Yeah.
But because places like the United States and even Europe are at a better place right now, they're sending ventilators, they're sending things over there that they had to drive to make and create themselves. For the surges. Now they're sharing that. They're talking about sharing vaccines, et cetera, so forth, to try and help them. And India has its own vaccine too, by the way, that they've certified. But they're going to be bringing them in more volume. So our prayers go out to that country. Pakistan, by the way, you're not hearing about that because the U.S. and Pakistan don't talk much. But Pakistan is going through the same things. They're in the same borders. And Pakistan is starting to experience in some of its dense areas similar type of surges. And so, this thing worldwide is not over.
No.
And so that's something people, even in our country, we tend to be so isolated and think of ourselves. We have to consider the fact that because if this thing is not killed off worldwide, it could come back again. It could come back as a different variant.
Yes.
It could spread throughout the world again. Maybe not now, maybe it's a year from now, 2 years. But when the variant becomes so different from the current vaccine, that the vaccines don't work anymore, you could have this whole cycle start all over again.
Right.
So we'd be ahead of it more now than we were in the past, but we got to be concerned about each other. This is a disease, I think, that more so than we've seen in a long time, is really driving us to think about each other.
Yes.
And we're not doing well at that, by the way. But typically we think about self, we think about our group, our family, and our concerns, right? In terms of money, in terms of jobs, all this stuff. But this disease really drives us to say, you have to think corporately, because it's not just me that's at risk, and it's not just me that protects me.
Mhm.
I need to protect you to protect me.
Exactly.
Right. And I need to protect me to protect you.
Right.
We haven't had to think like this
Exactly.
in a long time.
Mhm.
Right. Since we got all independent, got our own jobs, things like that. Back in the colonial days, right?
Mhm.
When people had to hunt for food, you didn't just survive by yourself.
Oh, no.
Right. You needed to be able to work with other people in your,
Exactly.
that's what we have communities.
Yes,
right? That's where communities came from.
We had the
We got to work
hunter-gatherers.
together, right? We got to
Right.
farm together,
Yes.
things like that. But now the mindsets are so independent, we're not used to this anymore.
No.
So this is really it's driving us to say,
That's very
we
true.
need to think about each other's well-being
Right.
at a whole different level than we've had to do in a long time.
Exactly.
So folks, I'm tired. It's been a long day. It's a little after 9 o'clock. We had a good show. Thank you for those that are on.
Mhm.
Those of you see this later. We're going to be back tomorrow with our service, 11:30 a.m. So join us at the church, Destiny Preparation Church. You can come in. A lot of people coming back now. A lot of people vaccinated at this point, which is great.
Yes.
In addition to that, we're still doing cleanliness, still doing masks, still doing all kind of things.
Temperature checks.
Temperature
We're
checks.
Still doing these things.
Going to be bringing our children's church back pretty soon as well. So things are coming back into live activity.
Yes.
Soon, not yet.
Not yet.
It's coming.
Yes.
Got a few things that'll be coming back, right? Another month or two. But feel free to come in, enjoy the services with us, or you can catch us live stream at 11:30 as well. And stay in touch, stay connected.
Yes.
Send us your comments, say hello, wave at us. You got concerns, we're still taking your prayer requests and praying. Every Saturday morning we have prayer. Fourth Fridays we have our prayer service. So stay in touch with us, everybody. God bless you. I think we're going to call it a night because I'm sleepy and I still got to get ready for one more service tomorrow. So we got work to do. Everybody have a good evening. We'll look forward to seeing you again next Saturday.
Yes.
11:30 a.m. Then I think, we'll talk about that. Next Saturday, 11:30 a.m. And then we'll be back and keep rolling.
Yes.
Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We serve a mighty God. We serve a holy God. We serve an awesome